The dashboard light cut the car into hard slices. Rain tapped the windshield in a nervous rhythm. I remember the way the earring caught the interior lamp. A tiny, obscene glint like a star that didn't belong in my sky. It was half hidden in the seat crevice. A delicate gold hook and a small pearl. Delicate enough that it felt like someone had left a promise behind. I picked it up with the tip of my finger and it felt too warm, as if it had just left someone else's skin. My name is Claire, and I live in a 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat in South Austin. My husband, Mark, has lived in this town longer than I have, drives the same battered Toyota Camry he inherited from his college roommate, and tells me the same stories about our first apartment, like a man rehearsing his vows. The earring was not mine. I knew that the moment I saw it. My ears are pierced with little hoops and a tiny stud, not pearls. Mark had no idea I'd found it. He was inside the grocery store grabbing milk, humming the same off-key chorus he uses to prove to himself that everything is normal. If you're new here, stick with me for a minute. There are 2 kinds of lies. The ones that trip you up in front of the neighbors, and the ones you let live in your house. I'm telling you this because if you've ever held a thing that belonged to someone else and felt your world shift, I want you to know you're not alone. I sat in the car for a long time. The rain made the world small and private. I could hear the laundromat machines below, a distant staccato like a heartbeat. In my head, I ran the usual scripts. Maybe a lost earring, maybe an old trinket Mark had forgotten to throw away, maybe a friend he was helping. My stomach did flips, but my hands were steady. I tucked the earring into my pocket and went home carrying it the way you carry a secret too small to shout about. The vulnerability here is that I wanted evidence, and I wanted to be cruel at the same time. I wanted to make him feel the little electric lurch I felt. I wanted proof, not rumors. I also wanted the option to be right and to be wrong, to have a decision to make with my eyes open instead of fuming in the dark. I've always been the sort of person who makes lists to think. This time, I made a list for the heart. That's where the idea came from. And yes, the method was petty. Not physically harmful instructions, but a domestic trick meant to provoke truth, not injury. I won't tell you how to do it. I'll only tell you what happened. That night, I moved through the apartment like a woman learning an old dance. I cleaned but left the sink half full. I folded Mark's shirts with a tenderness that felt like a threat, and I opened the underwear drawer where he kept his socks and boxers. I didn't catalog every sock. I didn't plan a trap with a manual. I just placed the tiny earring inside the drawer where it would be in his line of reach. Then I did something childish and symbolic. I replaced his folded shirts with a note I'd written long ago and never sent. I replaced his casualness with a small, inarticulate accusation. The paper said nothing neat. It said, "We need to talk." The plan, such as it was, came from a place I didn't like admitting to myself. A mix of fear, anger, and the desperate hope that confrontation could be the reset button. I could have called a friend, hired a private investigator, or parked myself at the grocery store until he came out. Instead, I did something that felt intimate and ridiculous at once. I would watch him. I would watch him find what I'd left, and I'd watch his reaction. If you're listening and thinking this is petty, you're right. But sometimes the small personal stunts are the only honest things left to people who don't know where to start. When Mark got home, he laughed at dinner and told a story about a coworker's cat. He did not look like a man holding a secret earring in his mouth. After the dishes, he padded toward the bedroom, humming, and I made tea like a woman manning a lighthouse, waiting to see which way he would steer. My hands trembled when he opened the drawer. He touched the fabric. He frowned. He pulled out the earring. His face changed in a way I could not have rehearsed. A flicker of confusion, a bolt of something like shame, then denial that arrived too fast to be honest. "Where did this come from?" he asked. His voice was small. He put the earring on the bedside table as if it were a detonator. The question was tiny and enormous at once. That tiny object had become an accusation, a talisman that forced a choice. And for the first time since I'd found it, I realized my little stunt might demand consequences I had not measured. The waiting was over. The real test was about to begin. When I woke up the next morning, the earring was gone from the nightstand. Just vanished. Mark had left early for work, and the bed beside me was cold. For a long time I lay there staring at the impression of his body in the sheets, that shallow dip where he always slept on his side. It looked almost like evidence, like the ghost of someone who used to love me right. You ever wake up knowing your life just split in two? That's how it felt. One version of me was still the wife who laughed at his corny jokes, made coffee for two, folded his laundry. The other version was wide awake, staring at a cracked ceiling, calculating. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat on the balcony that overlooked the parking lot. The morning light was soft and hazy, the kind that makes even the ugliest buildings look honest for a second. Mark's Camry sat there, silent, wet with dew. I stared at it like it could confess. My friend Roxy texted me, like she always does around 8 a.m. She's a hairstylist at a salon down the street, loud, loyal, and allergic to bullshit. I told her what happened. The message bubbles popped up almost instantly. Girl, you better not let that man gaslight you. You sure it wasn't yours? You better check his phone, his car, his soul if you have to. Her words made me laugh, but it was the hollow kind of laugh that stays in your throat. I didn't want to be that woman, the one who snoops, accuses, stalks her own husband. But I also didn't want to be the fool at brunch pretending everything's fine while another woman's jewelry sparkles on the passenger seat of my life. I looked back at the Camry, my reflection faint in the window. My gut said something was off. My brain told me to calm down. My heart was already in motion. That's when I decided I'd test him, not confront him. Not yet. I'd learn how he reacted when he thought he wasn't being watched. So, I waited until evening when he came home from work. I played it cool. We ordered Thai, watched Jeopardy, like nothing happened. He didn't mention the earring, not once. Around midnight when he fell asleep, I quietly slid out of bed. The moonlight made our bedroom look like a crime scene. Cold, pale, and still. I opened his top dresser drawer again, the one where he kept his socks, boxers, and random junk. Receipts, guitar picks, pocket change. That's when I remembered something my grandma used to say. If you can't get the truth from a man's mouth, check where he hides his comfort. I wanted to shake him up, not hurt him, not even embarrass him, just rattle that comfort. And yeah, maybe it was petty, but sometimes petty is just another word for done being quiet. So I did what angry wives have done for generations. I improvised. Now, I won't spell out every step because it's not about the act itself. It's about the message behind it. Let's just say I added a little Texas twist to his underwear drawer. A harmless wake-up call. Nothing dangerous, nothing lasting. Just something to make him squirm the way I'd been squirming in my own head all day. I went back to bed and stared at the ceiling again. The hum of the AC filled the silence between us. I thought about the earring, where it came from, who it touched before me. I thought about Mark's eyes, the way he'd looked confused, almost scared when he held it. I almost felt bad. Almost. The next morning, Mark moved slower than usual. He winced when he got dressed, scratching at the waistband of his boxers. I sipped my coffee, pretending to scroll through my phone, and asked casually, "Rough morning?" He shot me a quick, nervous look. "Just, laundry detergent or something. Feels weird." I nodded, keeping my face neutral. "Maybe it's that new fabric softener," I said. "You know, the one I told you not to buy from Dollar General." He forced a chuckle. "Yeah, probably that." But I watched him. The man couldn't stand still. He scratched, shifted, adjusted his pants, paced. Every movement screamed guilt more than discomfort. When he left for work, I finally let out a small, sharp laugh, the kind that comes from a place between satisfaction and heartbreak. Then I cried, hard, because watching him squirm didn't make me feel better. It just made everything more real. I texted Roxy again, told her I'd done something stupid but therapeutic. She sent 3 skull emojis and wrote, "Girl, you are chaotic, but also, I respect it." I went to work at the diner like usual. The place smelled like burnt coffee and bacon grease, and for once, I was grateful for the noise. The regulars came in, talking about football and weather, but all I could think about was the earring, the car, the empty space beside me in bed that no longer felt safe. That evening, Mark came home looking off, not scared exactly, but uneasy, like a man trying to hide that he's already confessed to someone else. He hugged me tighter than usual, kissed my forehead, told me he loved me, twice. I almost melted, almost forgave, but then I remembered that tiny pearl earring sitting cold in my pocket, and my chest hardened again. Later that night, he showered, then came out wrapped in a towel, scratching at his hip. I tried not to laugh. "You good?" I asked. He sighed. "Yeah, just must have sat on something at work. Weird rash or something." I smiled faintly. "Maybe you should see a doctor." He gave me this look, like he was trying to read whether I knew something. That flicker of doubt in his eyes. That's when I knew I had him right where I wanted. What I didn't know was that the truth wasn't going to come from Mark. It was going to come from somewhere else. A phone call, a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. But I'll get there soon. For now, all I knew was that something inside our home had shifted. And once a woman starts looking at her husband like a stranger, there's no going back. The next morning, Mark left early again. I listened to his shoes on the apartment stairs, those hurried thuds that always gave away when he was anxious. I stayed in bed until the air felt stale with silence, then got up and tugged the sheets tight like I was bandaging a wound we both refused to look at. I kept replaying his face, the startled innocence, the way his voice climbed into a question it couldn't back down from. And then I saw it, a faint purple crescent stamped on the inside of his wristwatch band, like a secret bruise with a sense of humor. I lifted the watch and held it near the window. That little shape, thin, curved, perfectly arched, wasn't a bruise. It was ink, the kind of stamp bouncers press onto skin at the door. I knew it because I've worn them myself years ago, when Roxy dragged me out dancing on a payday Friday. Back then, Mark came sometimes, awkward, but sweet, the guy who held my purse and pretended to two-step. We'd stopped going once bills got heavier and sleep got lighter, but the stamp on his skin said he'd found a door he walked through without me. I took a photo of the watch with my phone, zoomed in. The crescent had a tiny star tucked into its curve. I typed, "Austin Crescent Moon Star Stamp Bar," into the search bar like I was filing a police report no one would ever read. The results rolled in. Moon Tower Saloon on South First. A couple other places out by Menchaca. One picture on Yelp looked like an exact match. My stomach did a flip, the kind you get at the top of the Ferris wheel when you suddenly remember you hate heights. At work, the diner felt louder. Plates clattered like cymbals. The grill sizzled like news I wasn't ready for. During the lull after the breakfast rush, Roxy swung by with a foil-wrapped breakfast taco and eyes that said she wanted the latest episode. I dragged her into the back hallway near the walk-in. I showed her the photo of the stamp. "Moon Tower," she said immediately. "South Austin classic. Live music, cornhole, dudes in boots who say ma'am and think it's personality. You've been? Girl, I cut hair in this town. I know every stamp, every happy hour, every DJ who still plays Mr. Brightside like it's a tax deduction." We both laughed, but it felt like laughing in church, wrong and desperate. "So what?" I asked. "Maybe he went with coworkers? Maybe they celebrated someone's birthday?" Roxy's face softened. "Maybe," she said. "But that stamp plus that earring? My math ain't that generous." I worked the lunch shift with my body while my brain did surveillance. Every couple paying in cash looked like a duet with a secret. Every pearl on every woman's ear felt like a tiny accusation. When I finally clocked out, I didn't go home. I drove to Moon Tower Saloon and parked across the street like a woman auditioning for a country song. It was quiet in the daylight, just a couple of staff hosing down picnic tables. The stage was empty, the strings of lights asleep overhead. I walked in like I belonged and asked the bartender for a water. He slid it over without looking up. I took a breath that felt like a dare. "Hey," I said lightly, "do y'all use a purple crescent stamp at night?" He grinned. "Crescent, moon, and star. We're on brand." "Right," I said. "Last night busy?" He shrugged. "Thursday's pickup. We had a band. Dance floor was actually moving." "Why?" I stared at a knot in the wooden bar. "Just curious. My sister said she came and got stamped. I wanted to check, make sure she wasn't lying to me about where she was." He laughed, not unkindly. "We're the kind of place people lie about? That's cute." A woman stocking beer glanced up. She had short black hair and a forearm tattoo of wildflowers. "Couples night felt like prom," she said. "Had a guy out there who didn't know the steps, but his girl kept twirling him anyway." She mimed a spin, smiling. She wore a white blouse with little cherries and those pearl drop earrings that catch the light real pretty. My heart did a small, ugly thing. "Cherries?" I asked, voice thin. "Yup," she said. "Looked like thrifted anthro. Real cute." She went back to stacking cans. They left around 10. He tipped good. She kissed his cheek and smudged lipstick on his collar. You could see it from here. Something in the world tilted, but the floor stayed stubbornly flat. I thanked them, set a 5 on the bar for a free water because dignity needs tips, and walked out into the Texas sun. In my car, I sat with both hands on the steering wheel, staring at my reflection in the rear view. I had on a t-shirt with a coffee stain, and my hair in a messy bun that looked like a cry for help. On impulse, I texted Mark. "How's your day?" He responded right away. "Busy." "You?" I typed. "Slow. Maybe we should go out dancing tonight." Then deleted it. I typed, "We need to talk." Deleted that too. Finally, I wrote, "Pick up milk?" Hit send. On the drive home, I kept seeing cherries. Not the fruit. The pattern. Tiny red mouths floating on white cloth. I thought about the earring in my pocket. I thought about the stamp. I thought about the way the bartender said couples night felt like prom. It hit me then. He didn't look like a villain in this version. He looked like a teenager getting away with something dumb and shiny. That was somehow worse. Back at the apartment, I did laundry like a woman rehearsing a confession. That's when I found the tiny mark that made me see blood where there wasn't any. Tucked into the seam of Mark's light blue button-down. There it was. An almost invisible kiss of plum lipstick. The faintest smear near the collar. So small you could call it dust. So loud I could hear it from down the hall. I pressed my thumb to it and felt ridiculous, like I was trying to lift a fingerprint off a crime scene without the right powder. I carried the shirt to the kitchen table and laid it flat, smoothing the fabric like a map. The stain was a whisper, but it told a perfect story. I took another picture. My hands shook. I sent it to Roxy with no caption. She replied with a single line. "When are we going to talk to her?" "Who?" I typed, though I knew. "The woman with the cherries and pearl drops," she wrote. "Austin is small when people dance." I wanted to hate that woman, but my anger kept ricocheting, hitting Mark, then me, then the space between us where the truth blinked like a turn signal no one obeyed. I took a breath and did the only brave thing I could manage. I called the bar. "Hey," I said, when Wildflower's tattoo answered. "You mentioned last night the woman with the cherry blouse. Did she leave anything behind?" A pause. "Yeah," she said slowly. "We found an earring under a table this morning. Pearl drop." "Why?" My mouth went dry. I think it's part of a set." She exhaled. "Listen, you sound like you're having a day, so I'm gonna be straight. If you need to know who she is, I can't give you her name. But she left a business card when she opened a tab. Real estate. South Austin. Red logo." I swallowed. "Thank you." After we hung up, I stared at my phone like it owed me courage. I searched South Austin real estate red logo cherries blouse like a lunatic. Too many results. Then my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Something in me, a tiny, stubborn star, said answer. "Hello." A pause. Then a woman's voice, wary and soft. "You don't know me," she said, "but you found my earring." Her voice didn't sound like I expected. I thought it would come sharp and smug, the kind of voice that curls around another woman's name like a blade. But instead, it was gentle, low, careful, almost apologetic. It made my skin prickle worse than anger ever could. "Who is this?" I asked, trying to sound steady. "I think you know," she said. "You texted the number on the card at the bar. You said you found something that belonged to me." I froze. I hadn't texted anyone. My mind flicked through every action I'd taken in the last 24 hours. I'd called the bar. The bartender must have passed my number to her. My stomach tightened. "I don't think we should be talking," I said. "I agree," she said softly, "but I also think we need to." I could hear traffic in the background, a turn signal ticking, the whoosh of a passing car. Her voice carried the sound of wind through an open window. "Look," she said. "I didn't know he was married, I swear. He told me you two were separated, said it was complicated. You know how men are when they're trying to make bad decisions sound poetic." The words hit like hail. Fast, cold, no place to hide. "He said we were what?" "Separated," she repeated. "That you lived in the same apartment for practical reasons, but you were basically done." I wanted to scream, but all that came out was a shaky, humorless laugh. "Practical reasons. That's rich." We can't even agree on what to eat for dinner, let alone what counts as separation." She sighed, and I could tell she wasn't a villain. She was just another woman who believed a story that made sense until it didn't. "I'm sorry," she said. "I really am. I didn't call to start anything. I just thought you deserved to know." There was a long silence between us. I could hear her swallow, the phone shifting against her ear. "You're not the first person he's lied to," I said finally, "but I appreciate the decency." When I hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there in the kitchen staring at the microwave clock until the numbers blurred. It felt like being underwater, everything muffled, distorted, a heartbeat away from drowning. That night, I decided I wasn't going to sit quietly anymore. I was going to make him uncomfortable in a way that words couldn't. That's when the idea, half revenge, half experiment, started to take shape. Now, before I go any further, let me make this clear. I wasn't planning to harm him. Not physically, not even really emotionally. I just wanted him to feel a fraction of the confusion, the unease, the slow crawl of panic that had taken up residence in my chest. I wanted him to feel watched, not by me, but by his own conscience. I went to the kitchen pantry and pulled out a small jar of chili powder. The red dust shimmered in the light, vibrant and dangerous looking, like temptation in spice form. I stared at it for a long time. The way you stare at something you know you shouldn't touch. When Mark came home later, he looked tired. He gave me that half smile that used to melt me but now just felt like camouflage. He kissed my cheek, asked what was for dinner. I told him leftovers, my voice steady but my pulse racing. We sat on the couch, watching TV, pretending nothing was wrong. But every time he shifted, I noticed how his eyes darted to the earring on the coffee table, to my phone, to his reflection in the black screen between commercials. He was nervous. He just didn't know how much reason he had to be. After he fell asleep, I went into the bedroom. I opened his dresser drawer again, the one that had already played witness to too many quiet betrayals. His boxers were folded neatly, like he was trying to prove something. I lifted them gently, one stack at a time, and sprinkled just a pinch of the chili powder. Symbolic, not cruel. Enough to send a message, not to cause pain. As I worked, my thoughts buzzed. What was I really doing? Was I punishing him, or just trying to remind myself I still had power? Because when someone lies to you long enough, you start to doubt your own reflection. You start to think maybe you deserved it, or maybe you imagined the whole thing. But I hadn't imagined that earring. I hadn't imagined that lipstick stain. And now, I wasn't imagining this either. When I finished, I closed the drawer, wiped my hands on a dish towel, and stood there in the dim light. My heart was racing, my palms slick. It felt like standing at the edge of something irreversible. But instead of guilt, what washed over me was calm. The next morning was like waiting for a storm. Mark got dressed in a rush, muttering about traffic and deadlines. I watched him from the kitchen table as he pulled on his pants, buttoned his shirt, and reached for his drawer. The moment his hand went in, I held my breath. He froze, blinked, reached again. Then he scratched lightly at his hip, frowning. A tiny cough of irritation slipped from his throat. I kept my face blank, spooning cereal into my mouth like I hadn't just committed an act of suburban rebellion. "You okay?" I asked casually. He tugged at the waistband. "Yeah, guess I must have spilled detergent again." "Maybe you're allergic to something," I said. "You know, stress can do weird things to your skin." He didn't respond. He just gave me that wary glance, the kind of look people give when they can't tell if they're being tested. I smiled back, calm, maybe even kind. When he left for work, he kissed my forehead, and I swear I could taste the guilt on his lips. Later that day, Roxy came by again. She plopped down on my couch with a paper bag full of kolaches and the kind of energy that fills a room whether you want it to or not. "So?" she asked, eyes wide. "You do it?" "I did," I said. She gasped, then clapped her hands over her mouth. "Claire, you didn't." "Oh, I did," I said, a slow grin spreading across my face. "And it worked. He's jumpy as hell." Roxy let out a wheezing laugh. "Girl, you are a legend. He won't know if it's karma or chlamydia." That made me laugh too, hard and loud, until the laughter cracked and turned into something else. A sound that might have been a sob if I hadn't stopped it in time. Roxy's smile faded. "Hey, she said gently. You okay? I nodded. Yeah, I thought it'd feel better, you know? But it doesn't. It just feels like I've crossed into a place I can't walk back from. She took my hand. Then don't walk back, she said. Walk through. See where it leads. That night, I sat alone on the balcony again, watching the city hum. The air smelled like rain and street tacos and decisions. I thought about the woman on the phone, the softness in her voice, the honesty she didn't owe me. And I thought about Mark, and how every lie has its own expiration date. The chili drawer wasn't the end. It was just the first tremor before the quake. By Saturday morning, karma decided to get theatrical. Mark woke up scratching like a man possessed, muttering curses between gasps. His skin around the waistband was red and blotchy, and I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. You should probably see a doctor, I said, sipping coffee like a bystander at his own crime scene. He shot me a look. Yeah, maybe I'll hit urgent care. It's probably detergent or something. Probably, I said, and turned the page of the newspaper I wasn't reading. He shuffled off to the bathroom, half limping, half cursing. The sound of the shower drowned out my thoughts, but not the guilt creeping in. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I'd imagined mild discomfort, not a full-blown rash. Still, he wasn't bleeding. He wasn't broken. Just itchy, a physical metaphor for what his lies had done to me. When he came out dressed, he said, You want to ride with me to the clinic? Might take a while. I almost said no. But then the curiosity twisted inside me like a key in a lock. Sure, I said. I'll come. The urgent care sat near South Lamar, wedged between a pawn shop and a nail salon. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee. A crying toddler clung to his mother's leg. The fluorescent lights hummed like gossip. Mark signed in, then sat 2 chairs away from me. Not next to me. Not across. Just slightly diagonal, like a man unsure which version of himself I wanted to talk to. He scrolled his phone, pretending to be occupied. I watched the reflection of his screen in the plexiglass divider. Messages blinked fast. First names, emojis, little snippets that were too quick to read but too intimate to mistake. I leaned closer. Who's that? He glanced up, caught, and smiled like a bad actor. Work group chat. We're short-staffed today. Uh-huh, I said, tilting my head. You ever notice how work always texts with heart emojis these days? He froze for half a beat, then chuckled. That's Tanya. She's just friendly. Friendly. The word felt sour. I bit back the dozen things I wanted to say and instead pulled out my own phone, texting Roxy. At urgent care. He's scratching and lying. Roxy. Oh, poetic justice. You need popcorn? I smirked. It helped. The nurse called his name, and he followed her down the hallway. I stayed behind, scrolling social media just to keep my hands busy. 10 minutes passed. 15. Then 20. When he came back, he had that sheepish smile that men use like duct tape. Quick fix. No real repair. All good? I asked. Yeah, he said. They think it's a mild allergic reaction. Gave me a cream. Told me to avoid new detergents. I nodded, watching him carefully. Guess we should go back to the old brand then. He laughed nervously. Guess so. In the car, silence wrapped around us. The kind that hums. I could smell his aftershave, that cheap sandalwood one I used to love. Every breath felt like a memory I didn't want. Halfway home, his phone buzzed. He hesitated before picking it up. My stomach tightened. He swiped the notification away too fast. Everything okay? I asked. Yeah. Work stuff again. Work must really love you on weekends, I said. He sighed. Claire, can we not do this right now? Do what? This thing where every sound I make is suspicious. Well, I said softly, maybe if there weren't things to be suspicious about, I wouldn't have to. He clenched the steering wheel. You're looking for trouble where there isn't any. I looked out the window at the passing traffic, sunlight bouncing off car hoods, and you're pretending peace where there isn't any. Neither of us spoke the rest of the drive. When we got home, he went straight to the bedroom, muttering something about rest. I sat in the kitchen staring at the condensation sliding down my glass. That's when his phone buzzed again, left behind on the counter, face up, like a dare. I shouldn't have looked. I know that, but I did. The preview showed one name, Tanya, and the message read, Hope the rash isn't too bad. I swear my heart didn't just drop. It combusted. My hands went cold, my pulse hot. When he came out, I was still holding the phone. "You might want to read your work message," I said, my voice steady in a way that scared even me. He froze, saw the screen. Color drained from his face. "Claire, that's not—" "Don't," I said sharply. "Please don't insult me with whatever performance you're about to give." He reached for the phone. I pulled it back. "So this is Tanya," I said. "Friendly Tanya with the heart emojis." He rubbed his face. "It's not what it looks like." "It never is," I said. "That's the oldest line in the book, Mark. She's just someone from work." It got blurry, but nothing happened. "Nothing happened," I repeated, voice brittle. "So she just happens to know about your rash?" He swallowed. "I told her. I was venting. We talk sometimes. She's easy to talk to. Easier than your wife." That one landed. He shut his eyes. "Claire, you haven't exactly been open lately. You're distant. Angry." "Oh, I'm sorry," I snapped. "Was my lack of cheer inconvenient for your emotional affair?" He slammed his hand on the counter. The sound cracked through the kitchen. "You always twist everything. You make me the villain before you even ask for the truth." "I found another woman's earring in your car," I shouted. "You lied about where you were. You lied about everything." The words bounced off the walls, echoing like something breaking. We stood there breathing heavy. Two ghosts trapped in the same apartment. Finally, I dropped the phone on the table. "You should sleep on the couch," I said quietly. He didn't argue, just grabbed a pillow and disappeared down the hall. When the door shut, I let the tears come. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady, endless. My reflection in the dark window looked like a stranger. I texted Roxy again. "He's been talking to a woman named Tanya. Says it's just emotional." Roxy: "Emotional affairs are still affairs, babe." Me: "Yeah, and emotions hurt worse than lipstick stains." Around midnight, I walked past the couch. Mark was asleep, one arm over his eyes, the other hanging off the side. For the first time in years, I didn't feel pity or love, just distance. But as I looked down at him, something clicked. His phone, still on the coffee table, buzzed again. Another message from Tanya. Only this time it wasn't words. It was a picture, a blurry selfie, her face close to his shoulder. And in her ear, the missing earring. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. I sat at the edge of the couch, the glow from his phone still burning in my brain. That picture looped over and over, her leaning into him, soft smile, that pearl earring catching the light. The same earring I'd found wedged between the seat cushions of his car. The same earring I'd turned into a symbol, a question mark, a curse. And there it was again, mocking me in full color. He woke up just before sunrise, rubbing his eyes, confused about where he was. The guilt hit him before the morning light did. I could see it. His eyes darted to his phone, then to me, then back again. He knew. He knew I'd seen it. "Claire," he started, his voice groggy but cautious. "Don't," I said. "Just don't start with my name like it's a prayer. You don't get to talk to me like that anymore." He swallowed, his Adam's apple jumping like it was trying to run away. "I can explain." I laughed, a sharp, brittle sound that surprised even me. "Of course you can. Men like you always can. You've got a reason for every lie, and somehow they all sound rehearsed." He sat up, hands clasped like he was about to testify. "It wasn't what it looked like. That night at Moon Tower, Moon Tower," I interrupted, my voice rising. "So you admit it now?" He froze, realizing what he'd said. I watched the panic ripple across his face. That was the crack in his story, the place where the truth started to bleed through the fabric of his lies. I leaned forward. "You told me you were working late that night. You even brought home a receipt from Whataburger to make it believable. Did you think I wouldn't notice the timestamp? 11:42 p.m. That place closes at 10. He opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. I was too far gone for grace. "You think I don't know how this works?" I said, voice trembling. "You think I've never been lied to before? I grew up watching my mom pretend she didn't know what my dad was doing every weekend when he went fishing. I told myself I'd never be her. But here I am, sitting in an apartment above a damn laundromat, waiting for a man who can't even tell the truth about a rash." He stood up then, too fast, like he needed to move before the guilt swallowed him. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," he said. "It started as nothing. We were just talking." She listens. She laughs at my dumb jokes. You used to laugh at them too. That last part stung more than I expected. I clenched my jaw. "So because I stopped laughing, you went shopping for an audience?" He ran a hand through his hair. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it, Mark?" I asked, stepping closer. "What do you call sneaking around with a woman who wears pearl earrings and knows what brand of boxers you prefer?" He flinched. That told me everything I needed to know. I felt my throat tighten, but I refused to cry in front of him again. "You could have just told me you were unhappy," I said quietly. "You could have told me you needed space. But you didn't want space, did you? You wanted comfort without consequences." He rubbed his face, exhaling hard. "I'm sorry," he said, and the words sounded like dust. "No," I said. "You're sorry you got caught." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the buzz of the neon sign from the laundromat below. It was the kind of silence that swallows apologies whole. Finally, I turned and walked toward the door. I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there another second. Outside, the air was cool and damp. South Austin was still half asleep, the streets washed in a soft gray light. I walked aimlessly, passing closed coffee shops and stray cats darting under cars. My chest ached like I'd been running, even though my steps were slow. I ended up at the park near Barton Springs, the one where Mark and I used to sit with breakfast tacos on Sunday mornings, talking about dreams we never chased. I sat on the same bench and tried to remember what it felt like to love him without suspicion. The memory wouldn't come. After a while, my phone buzzed. It was Roxy. "You okay?" Define okay. "Do I need to bring tequila or a shovel?" That made me smile. "Neither," I typed. "Not yet." She replied with a single heart emoji, and somehow that small kindness cracked me open more than Mark's lies had. I sat there until the sun burned through the clouds, painting everything gold. That's when I realized something simple but terrifying. The truth didn't just change what I thought about Mark. It changed what I thought about myself. When I finally went home, Mark was sitting at the table, hands folded, a pathetic sight of remorse. The coffee pot was still half full. He looked up like he'd been waiting for his verdict. I called her. He said quietly, "Tanya, I told her it was over." "Good," I said flatly. "That's between you and her now. I'm not cleaning up after that." "She didn't know about you," he said. "I told her we were separated." I stared at him. "You told her that because it made you sound like the victim. You got to play the sad husband whose cold wife didn't understand him. It's easier to lie when you make yourself look pitiful." He winced but didn't argue. "I'm not stupid, Mark," I said. "And I'm not your mother. I don't have to forgive you just because you're sorry." He reached across the table, his hand trembling. "I don't want to lose you." "You already did," I said. He looked down. Can we at least talk about fixing this?" I almost laughed. "Fixing this? You can't fix something that's still on fire. You have to let it burn first." He blinked, tears gathering in his eyes. "I don't want to lose you," he repeated. "You should have thought about that before you started chasing someone else's laughter," I said, my voice breaking for the first time all morning. I turned away before he could see me cry again. I went into the bedroom and closed the door. For a long time, I just stood there, breathing. The scent of his aftershave still hung in the air. The bed looked like a crime scene. Sheets twisted, pillows indented, the ghost of us still there. I pulled open the dresser drawer, the same one that had started all of this, and stared at it. The clothes were neat again. The chili powder was gone, vacuumed or washed away, but I could still feel its presence, the sting of truth, the burn of betrayal. That drawer had become a symbol, a place where lies went to hide, and where I'd learned how to smoke them out. I closed it slowly, whispering to the empty room, "It's not over yet." Because deep down, I knew the story wasn't finished. There was still the other woman's side. There was still a reckoning waiting somewhere on the horizon. And I wasn't done being the woman who looked her pain in the eye and said, "I see you." Not yet. I went back to work that night like a woman on autopilot. The diner's neon sign flickered red against the wet pavement, buzzing like a bad memory that wouldn't quit. Saturday nights were usually my favorite. College kids laughing over pancakes at midnight, couples leaning into each other in corner booths. Old men sipping coffee and telling the same stories for the 100th time. But that night, every laugh sounded like betrayal. Every love song on the jukebox felt like mockery. Roxy was working the late shift with me. She could read my mood before I even tied my apron. "You look like you're about to put a man in the trunk," she said, sliding a tray of mugs toward me. I gave a half smile. Tempting. "So what happened?" she asked. "He admitted to Moon Tower, admitted to Tanya, said it was emotional." Roxy snorted. "Emotional my ass. If a woman sent me heart emojis and selfies, my husband wouldn't have emotions left to process." I laughed, a dry sound that didn't quite reach my eyes. "He says he ended it. But he said that about drinking once, and I still find beer cans under the sink. Men don't end things," Roxy said. "They just pause 'em until it's convenient again." I thought about that all through my shift, pouring coffee, wiping counters, pretending to care about someone's late-night omelet order. My mind kept looping back to that photo, the earring glinting near his jaw, her cheek pressed against his shoulder like she owned the place. Around 10, a guy came in wearing a hoodie and ball cap. He sat at the counter, hunched over a menu. When he looked up, my stomach did a slow roll. It was Mark. Of all the diners in Austin, he had to pick mine. He looked awful. Tired, rumpled, eyes puffy like he hadn't slept. I walked over slowly, pen poised. "Coffee?" I asked. He nodded without meeting my gaze. "Please." As I poured, he whispered, "Can we talk?" "Not here," I said. He sighed. "Claire, please. I can't let it end like this." "Then you shouldn't have started it like that," I said quietly, setting down his cup. He rubbed his temples. "You have every right to be mad. But I swear, I told her it was over. I even showed her a picture of us. Said I was trying to fix things with my wife." My hand froze. "You showed her a picture of us?" He nodded, desperate now. "She texted me after. Said she understood. Said she'd move on." I tilted my head. "Funny, because she also called me." His eyes widened. "She what?" "Yeah," I said. "Turns out your understanding girlfriend is a lot more honest than you are. She told me everything." He blinked, trying to process. "She called you?" I leaned forward on the counter. "Guess she has more integrity than the both of us combined." Roxy, catching the tension from across the diner, mouthed, "You good?" I nodded slightly, though my heart was pounding. Mark swallowed hard. "I didn't want you to find out like this." I gave a bitter laugh. "You mean you didn't want me to find out at all?" He shook his head. "You're twisting my words." "No, Mark," I said, lowering my voice. "You're twisting my life." He looked like he wanted to cry. "I messed up. I know that. But I swear it didn't go as far as you think." I folded my arms. "Then tell me what you think I think." He hesitated, eyes darting to the other customers. "Can we not do this here?" I leaned closer. "You brought it here. You showed up in my workplace, so now you get the diner version of the truth." He pressed his hands to his face, whispering, "God, Claire." Something in me softened for half a second, remembering the man I used to love, the one who built IKEA furniture without instructions, who sang in the car off-key, who held my hair when I was sick. Then I remembered the picture, the pearl, the lie, the softness hardened again. "You need to go," I said firmly. "I can't do this here." He nodded, defeated. "Can I at least call you tomorrow?" I shrugged. "You can try." He left a 20 under the coffee mug and walked out into the rain. The bell above the door jingled like punctuation. Roxy came over, eyebrows raised. "That was him, wasn't it?" "Yup. And I think he's scared," I said. "But not of losing me, of losing control." Roxy shook her head. "Men only get scared when they realize the story isn't about them anymore." After the rush died down, I sat in a booth, staring at the reflection of the neon lights in the window. The city outside looked blurred and endless. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number again. It wasn't Mark. It was her. Unknown. "I didn't mean to make things worse, but I thought you should know. He came to my office today." My pulse spiked. "Me? Why?" "Unknown. He said he wanted to apologize, but he asked me not to tell you." "Me. And yet here you are, telling me." "Unknown. Because I'm not like him." I stared at that for a long time. My reflection in the window looked like a stranger I was still learning to trust. When I clocked out, Roxy offered me a ride home, but I declined. I needed air, space, movement. I walked the 3 blocks back to the apartment, the rain soaking through my sneakers, lightning flickering across the skyline. When I got home, Mark was on the couch again, the TV off, just sitting there in the dark. He looked up when I walked in, eyes red. "I went to see her," he said quietly, before I could even take off my jacket. "Not because I wanted her back, because I wanted closure." "Closure," I repeated. "That's what we're calling it now?" "She needed to hear it from me," he said. "That it was over, that I was choosing you." I let out a slow, shaky breath. "You don't get to choose me like a prize at a carnival, Mark. You had me. You lost me. That's the consequence." He looked down. "I know, but I can't stand the thought of you hating me." I sank into the armchair, exhausted. "You don't get to control how I heal." He nodded, silent. The rain kept tapping against the window, steady and relentless. The sound filled the room between us, louder than our breathing, softer than our regrets. After a while, I stood. "I'm sleeping in the bedroom tonight. You stay out here." He didn't argue, but when I closed the door, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through the texts from the unknown number until my thumb ached. Then, without thinking, I typed back, "Me. Thank you for being honest. You didn't owe me that." She replied almost instantly. "Unknown. You didn't deserve any of this. If it helps, I think he's scared of how strong you are." I stared at those words, my throat tightening. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to clarity. Not peace, but power. He could lie. He could twist. He could scramble for redemption. But the truth had already cracked open, and there was no sealing it again. Tomorrow, I decided, I'd talk to her, face to face, woman to woman. Because some stories don't end in screaming matches or slam doors. Some end with 2 women sitting across from each other, comparing scars. And I was ready to see mine in the daylight. Sunday morning came with that gray, heavy light that always feels like the sky's holding its breath. I made coffee, not because I wanted it, but because doing something normal kept my hands from shaking. Mark was still asleep on the couch, his arm dangling off the side, the TV remote on the floor like a dropped apology. I watched him for a moment, that same face I used to trace with my finger when we were young and soft and stupid in love, and for the first time, I didn't feel sadness. I felt distance, the kind that stretches between 2 people until you can't even hear each other breathe. My phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number again. Her. Unknown. "If you're up for it, I'd like to meet. Just to talk. No drama." I stared at the message. My stomach twisted. Every instinct screamed, "Don't do it." But the other voice, the one that had been whispering through every sleepless night, said I needed to. Not to yell, not to fight, but to look her in the eye and see if I could find the truth that Mark kept burying under excuses. "Me. Where?" She replied almost immediately. "Unknown. Corner of South Congress and Milton. Little coffee shop with the blue awning. Noon?" I looked at the clock. 9:13. I had less than 3 hours to decide if I wanted to walk into that fire. Roxy called around 10, like she knew I needed backup. "You sound like somebody about to do something stupid," she said before I could even say hello. "I'm meeting her," I said. Dead silence for a beat. Then, "Girl, no. You sure about that? I don't know if sure exists anymore. I need to see her face. I need to know what kind of woman believes his lies." Roxy sighed. "Fine, but don't go in ready to swing. You know Austin PD don't play about public disturbances." "I'm not gonna fight her," I said. "I just want to understand." "Understanding is overrated," Roxy muttered. "Closure don't pay rent." I laughed softly. "Yeah, but peace might." By the time I left the apartment, Mark was awake, sitting at the kitchen table in his boxers, staring at his coffee like it held the answers. "Where you headed?" he asked, voice rough. "Out," I said, grabbing my keys. "Out where?" I met his eyes. "Somewhere honest." He opened his mouth to speak, but I was already out the door. The coffee shop was small and crowded, the kind of Austin place that smells like roasted beans and ambition. I spotted her right away. She was sitting by the window in a white blouse with a subtle cherry print, not the same one from the photo, but close enough to twist my stomach. Her hair was darker than I remembered, pulled into a low ponytail. She looked ordinary, heartbreakingly so. Not the villain I'd built in my mind, just another woman who got caught in the same storm. She saw me and stood, nervous but polite. "Claire?" I nodded. "That's me." We shook hands. Her palm was cold. "I'm Olivia," she said. Of course her name was Olivia. Soft, symmetrical, a name that doesn't look guilty even when it should. We sat down. Neither of us spoke for a moment. The air between us buzzed with all the things we didn't know how to say. Finally, she broke the silence. "I wasn't sure you'd come." I wasn't sure either. She gave a small, sad smile. I guess we both underestimated how much women can take. I studied her tired eyes, her bitten lip, the faint tremor in her hand as she lifted her coffee cup. "How long?" I asked. 3 months, she said. "Give or take. 3 months," I repeated. "And in all that time he never mentioned he was married?" Her eyes glistened. "He did, eventually. Said you were living apart, that things were complicated." "That's his favorite word," I muttered. "Complicated. Makes it sound poetic, doesn't it? Like betrayal's just another verse in some tragic love song." She flinched, but didn't look away. "I didn't believe him at first, but he showed me pictures. One of your apartment. Said it was his place now. Said you moved out. I should have known. He's a good liar," I said. She nodded. "Too good." We sat in silence again, the hum of espresso machines filling the gaps between us. Then she said softly, "He told me you were the one who'd stopped trying. That you didn't talk to him, didn't touch him, didn't care." My chest tightened. "Yeah, that's what men say when they want permission to be selfish. I figured that out," she said. "Too late, but I did." Something about the way she said it, flat, exhausted, made my anger soften. I'd come expecting confrontation. Instead, what I found was reflection. She wasn't the enemy. She was just me in another timeline. "I'm sorry," she said suddenly. "If I'd known, I would have walked away sooner." "I'm not mad at you," I said, surprising myself with how true it sounded. "You didn't make vows to me." "He did." She nodded, her throat working. "Still, I should have listened to the part of me that felt wrong." We both went quiet again, and the noise of the cafe faded until it felt like we were the only 2 people in Austin. After a moment, I asked, "Why'd you call me?" Her answer came fast. "Sure. Because I didn't want to be another woman he lied about. I thought you deserved the truth, from someone who wasn't protecting him." That hit deep. I took a slow breath. "Thank you," I said, "for being braver than he ever was." She smiled faintly. "Funny. He said the same thing about you." That threw me. "What?" "He told me once that you were the strongest person he knew, that no matter what happened, you'd survive it." I stared at her. "He said that?" She nodded. "It's why I called. Because when a man talks about a woman like that and still chooses to hurt her, you know he's broken." The words sank into me like rain on dry soil. For the first time in weeks, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But clarity. We finished our coffees in silence. When I stood to leave, Olivia reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet pouch. "This belongs to you," she said, sliding it across the table. Inside was the earring, the twin of the one I'd found in the car. "I don't want them anymore," she said. "They don't look as pretty as they used to." I closed my fist around it. "Neither does he." We both laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that feels like letting go. As I walked out of the cafe, the sun broke through the clouds. Austin buzzed around me, scooters zipping by, a busker playing guitar, a couple arguing about parking. Life kept moving, indifferent to my heartbreak. But for the first time, I didn't feel stuck inside it. I looked down at the earring in my palm, its pearl catching the light. It wasn't a symbol of pain anymore. It was proof that I could face the truth and not crumble. Proof that I could walk away without needing to burn everything behind me. When I got home, Mark was still on the couch. He looked up, expectant. "Where were you?" "Out," I said again, getting answers. He hesitated. "From her?" "Yeah," I said. "From her, not from you." His shoulders sagged. "And what did she say?" "That you're a coward," I said, slipping the earring onto the table between us. "But don't worry, I already knew that part." He didn't say a word. I walked past him, into the bedroom, and started packing a bag. Sometimes confrontation isn't a fight. Sometimes it's silence, movement, and a door closing softly behind you. And that's exactly what I gave him. The thing about leaving isn't the act itself, it's the echo that follows. You walk out, close the door, and for a few seconds it feels like freedom. Then, the silence hits. And in that silence, every memory, every argument, every almost apology comes crawling back like it has a key. I spent that first night at Roxy's. Her apartment smelled like hairspray and cinnamon candles, and there were wigs drying on mannequin heads in the corner. It felt chaotic, alive, exactly what I needed. She didn't ask questions when I showed up with a duffel bag and red eyes. She just poured me a glass of wine and said, "Girl, sit. The couch is clean. You ain't gotta explain." We sat there watching the Golden Girls reruns, and for the first time in a long time I laughed. A real laugh, the kind that comes from the stomach, not from politeness. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. Mark. I let it ring out. Then it buzzed again. A voicemail this time. I stared at it for a long while before pressing play. His voice cracked through the speaker. "Claire, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need to say this. I messed up. I don't even know how to begin fixing it. I lied because I was scared. Scared of how far apart we'd drifted. Scared that I didn't know how to reach you anymore. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I miss the sound of you laughing. I miss Sunday mornings. Please call me." I played it twice, then deleted it. "Who was that?" Roxy asked, curling her legs under a blanket. "The ghost of bad decisions," I said. She grinned. "Girl, you sound like a blues song." "I feel like one," I said, and we both laughed again. The next morning, I woke up on her couch, sunlight streaming through cheap blinds. My chest felt lighter, like my ribs had finally remembered how to make room for air. Roxy was already dressed for work, coffee in hand. "You staying another night?" she asked. "Probably," I said. "He needs space, and I need perspective." She nodded. "You take all the space you need, babe. Don't let him pull you back in just because he's lonely." But of course, loneliness doesn't wait for permission. It crawls in through the cracks. By noon, my phone was full of unread texts from Mark. "Mark, can we talk?" "Mark, I get it if you hate me. I just want to see you." "Mark, please, I'll wait outside if I have to." I ignored them. But then came the last one. "Mark, I went to your mom's house. She's worried about you." That one did it. I called immediately. "You went to my mother's house?" "Claire," he said, relief flooding his voice. "Thank God. I didn't know where else." "Don't you ever drag her into this," I snapped. "She's been through enough men who thought showing up made them righteous." "I wasn't trying to upset her," he said. "I just wanted to know you were safe." "Safe from what?" "You?" He went silent. "Mark," I said finally, "you need to stop calling. Stop texting. Stop pretending this is something we can fix in a week." "I can't," he whispered. "I can't let you go like this." "Then don't," I said. "Let me go like that, the way you did when you lied." And I hung up. That night, after Roxy went to bed, I sat out on her balcony watching the city lights blink. Austin hummed below. Live music somewhere, cars cruising, laughter spilling out of bars. It should have felt lonely, but it didn't. It felt honest. Then another buzz. But this time, it wasn't Mark. It was Olivia. "Olivia, I thought you should know." He called me again. My heart thudded. "Me. What did he say?" "Olivia. He said he wanted to make sure I wouldn't tell you everything. Said if I cared about him, I'd keep quiet." I stared at the screen. "Me. And did you?" "Olivia. No. I blocked him after that. But you should be careful. He's unraveling." I sat there a long time, phone cold in my hand. He was unraveling. And part of me hated that I still cared. That I still pictured him pacing the apartment, running his hands through his hair, regretting everything too late. The next day, I drove past our old place. His car was parked outside. Same dented bumper, same faded parking sticker. I don't know why I stopped. Maybe I needed to see it. The physical space where everything had cracked open. Through the window, I could see him sitting on the couch, head in his hands. Empty coffee mug on the table, the blinds half open. For a moment, I almost went in. Almost. Then I remembered the earring, the stamp, the lies, and the almost turned to never. I drove away. Over the next few days, the confessions started rolling in. Not from Mark, but from everyone else. Mutual friends, co-workers, neighbors, all of them with tiny fragments of truth that stitched together into something ugly and complete. Yeah, I saw him at Moon Tower a few times. He said you were on a break. He asked if I thought he should move out. Each piece was another nail in the coffin of who I thought we were. Roxy listened while I vented, pacing her kitchen with a glass of wine in my hand. He built a whole narrative, I said. A fantasy where I was the bad guy. Roxy smirked. That's because guilt makes cowards creative. I stopped pacing. You think he ever really loved me? She tilted her head. Yeah, probably. But love don't mean much when you're lazy with it. Some folks love you and still break you just to see if they can fix you after. I let that sit. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened my notes app and started writing. Not to him, not to Olivia, to myself. A list. A reckoning. You are not crazy. You are not too much. You didn't drive him to lie. You don't have to forgive him to be free. You are still whole. I fell asleep with that list open on my chest, and when I woke up, the first thing I did was whisper those lines aloud. By Wednesday, I felt steadier. I started looking for a new place. A studio apartment near Zilker, small but bright, with a balcony that caught the sunset. The landlord asked if I was single, and for the first time, the word didn't sting. Still, Mark wasn't done. He sent one last message. Mark, can we meet? Just once. No lies. I'll answer anything. I should have ignored it. But closure is a sneaky thing. It convinces you that one more conversation will fix what 1,000 apologies couldn't. So I agreed. We met at the park where it had all begun. Barton Springs, under the oak tree by the water. The same spot where we'd once shared breakfast tacos and plans for a future that no longer existed. He looked rough, eyes bloodshot, hair uncombed, wearing that same faded gray hoodie he always pulled on when he felt guilty. Thank you for coming, he said softly. Don't thank me, I said. Just be honest. He nodded, took a breath. I never meant to hurt you. That's not honesty, I said. That's habit. He looked away, tears pooling. Okay, then here's the truth. I felt invisible. I wanted to feel wanted again. And she made me feel seen. I swallowed hard. So you traded loyalty for validation. He nodded. Yeah, I guess I did. We sat in silence. Wind rustled the trees. Kids laughed in the distance. The world carried on, like heartbreak wasn't happening in real time. Do you still love her? I asked. He shook his head. No, I don't even think I ever did. Then why'd you keep calling her? He flinched. Because she was the only person who didn't look at me like I was a monster. I met his eyes. That's because she didn't know you yet. He let out a strangled laugh. You always did know how to cut deep. I stood. No, Mark. I just learned from the best. As I walked away, he called after me. Claire, please, how do I make it right? I didn't turn around. You don't. You live with it. And I kept walking, the sound of his sob catching in the wind behind me. It's strange how quickly the wreckage of one life can blend into the rhythm of another. A week after that last talk with Mark, I'd already settled into a quiet routine. Work, sleep, repeat, like muscle memory had taken over. But every night when I turned off the diner lights, the ghost of that conversation at Barton Springs followed me home. His words, his excuses, the way his voice cracked when he said, I wanted to feel wanted. It kept echoing in my chest like a bad song I couldn't turn off. I told myself I was done with both of them, him and her. But the truth has a way of circling back until you face it, and that truth came knocking one Thursday afternoon while I was wiping down tables at closing time. The bell over the door jingled, and when I looked up, there she was, Olivia, dressed in jeans, a navy blazer, and those same pearl drop earrings. My first instinct was confusion, then caution, then something else, curiosity. Hey, she said softly. I hope it's okay that I stopped by. Roxy, who was restocking behind the counter, froze mid-motion. Is this? She mouthed. Yeah, I whispered. I nodded for Olivia to sit. Roxy raised an eyebrow but gave us space. I poured 2 coffees, black for her, sweet for me. The silence between us was thick, but not hostile, just loaded with too many unspoken things. I didn't mean to ambush you, Olivia said, wrapping her hands around the cup. I found something, and I thought you should see it. My heart kicked up. What is it? She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He sent me this. Yesterday. My chest tightened as I took it. The handwriting was unmistakable. Mark's messy scrawl that always leaned uphill like it was running from something. Olivia, I shouldn't be writing, but I don't know how to stop. I miss talking to you. I know it's wrong, but there's a hole in my life now, and I keep trying to fill it with guilt and apologies that don't work. Claire hates me. I don't blame her, but she won't even look at me anymore. You were the only person who made me feel like I wasn't a total failure. Please don't respond. Just know that I'm sorry for everything. Mark. I stared at it, numb. When did he send this? 2 days ago, she said. He must have used his work email. I blocked his number, but I guess he found another way. Did you reply? She shook her head. No. I didn't even want to tell you, but I thought, you deserve to know he's still reaching out. I folded the paper slowly, forcing my hands not to tremble. He can't let go. He needs someone to listen to his guilt. That's exactly what it feels like, she said quietly. Like he's addicted to confession. I looked at her. Really looked. She had circles under her eyes, a tension in her shoulders that felt too familiar. This man had hurt both of us in different ways, but the bruise looked the same. Can I ask you something? I said. Of course. When did you realize it wasn't love? She took a long sip before answering. The night he told me about you. He said you were complicated, that you didn't understand him anymore. But when he said your name, there was something in his voice. This ache, this reverence. I knew right then he still loved you. He just didn't know how to be that man anymore. My throat tightened. That doesn't make it better. No, she said softly, but it makes it human. For a while we just sat there, two women on opposite sides of the same heartbreak. The diner lights flickered once, the universe reminding me that even electricity can only handle so much tension before it breaks. Do you ever think about forgiving him? She asked suddenly. I thought about it. About forgiveness as a kind of self-preservation, not mercy. Maybe one day, I said. But not for him. For me. She nodded slowly. That's what I'm trying to do too. Outside, rain started tapping against the window. Light. Rhythmic. The kind of rain that sounds like closure trying to sneak in quietly. Then she said something I didn't expect. He told me something about you. I don't know if it's true. My eyebrows lifted. What? That you used to write, she said. That you wanted to publish something one day but stopped because he said it wouldn't pay the bills. I froze. I hadn't told anyone that in years. Yeah, I said finally. It's true. You should start again, she said simply. You tell stories better than he ever could tell the truth. That line hit me so hard I almost laughed. You sound like Roxy. Smart woman, she said, smiling. We talked for another hour. Not about him, but about everything else. Work, family, the way Austin smells like rain and barbecue smoke in the same breath. It felt healing, like reclaiming something that was stolen. When she finally stood to leave, she said, I don't know if I'll ever see him again, but if I do, I'll tell him something for both of us. What's that? I asked. That he lost 2 good women in one lifetime, and that's a kind of punishment no apology can fix. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so I did both. After she left, Roxy came over with 2 slices of pie. You okay? Yeah, I said, surprising myself with how true it felt. Actually, yeah. She glanced at the folded letter on the counter. He's still poking at you, huh? Not for long, I said. I'm done letting him rent space in my head. She grinned. There's my girl. That night, back at Roxy's apartment, I opened my laptop for the first time in months. The screen's glow filled the dark room, blank and expectant. I started typing. Not a letter to Mark, not a diary entry, just a story. It started with a woman finding another woman's earring in her husband's car. And as I wrote, I realized something I hadn't before. This wasn't just my story anymore. It was ours, mine, Roxy's, Olivia's, and every woman who'd ever been made to question her own reality because a man was better at lying than loving. The words poured out faster than I could type. Anger turned to rhythm, pain turned to poetry. By the time I stopped, it was sunrise. The sky over South Austin glowed pink and gold, and for the first time in forever, I didn't feel broken. I felt reborn. I sent a single text to Olivia before I closed my laptop. Me, thank you for telling me the truth when he wouldn't. She replied minutes later. Olivia, We all deserve to stop apologizing for surviving. I stared at that message until tears blurred my vision. The next morning, I sent Mark's letter, the one he'd written to her, back to him in an envelope. No note, no explanation, just his own words staring back at him like a mirror. I imagined his face when he opened it. The confusion, the recognition, the slow understanding that the silence wasn't avoidance. It was power. And somewhere deep down, I hoped he'd finally learn what I had. Sometimes the best revenge isn't fury, it's peace. The week that followed felt like standing at a fork in the road. One path led to fire, the other to forgiveness. Both were hard, both burned. I'd mailed that letter to Mark and thought the act alone would close the door. But healing doesn't work like that. It lingers. It waits for quiet moments, like the space between brushing your teeth and turning off the bathroom light, to whisper, "You're still angry." I didn't want to be angry anymore. Anger had kept me alive, sure, but it also kept me up at night replaying everything. His smile, her blouse, the damn earring. So one morning, after a restless sleep and too much coffee, I made a list on the back of a diner receipt. At the top, I wrote, "What forgiveness could look like if I ever decide I want it." It's not forgetting. It's not inviting him back. It's looking at the wound and saying, "You don't control me anymore." It's walking past our old apartment without flinching. It's laughing again. For real this time. I folded the list and tucked it into my wallet like a prayer. That afternoon, I drove to Lady Bird Lake. I parked near the running trail and walked along the water, watching joggers pass, dogs splashing, families on rented kayaks. The world looked effortlessly alive, and I wanted to feel part of it again. I sat on a bench near the bridge and took out my phone. My thumb hovered over his contact for a full minute before I finally pressed block. The relief was immediate, small but solid, like the first deep breath after being underwater too long. When I got home to Roxy's, she was sitting cross-legged on the couch scrolling through listings. "Okay, hear me out," she said. "I found you a place. It's small, but it's got a balcony and a kitchen that doesn't look like a crime scene." I leaned over her shoulder. The photos showed a one-bedroom apartment in East Austin. Exposed brick, sunlight pouring through wide windows. It wasn't fancy, but it looked like freedom. I smiled. "How much?" "Reasonable," she said, grinning. "And the landlord's old and deaf, so you can play sad breakup music at full volume." I laughed. "You know me too well." "Please," she said, tossing her hair. "I've been your emotional first responder since 2013. That night, over takeout and wine, we packed the last of my things from her guest closet. She kept making me promise that I'd call if I ever felt lonely. I told her I'd be fine, and for the first time, I actually believed it. Moving day was quiet. I drove across the city with the windows down, the wind whipping through my hair, Austin radio humming low in the background. When I got to the new apartment, I just stood in the doorway for a moment, breathing it in. Bare floors, blank walls, sunlight spilling in like an invitation. I set my bag down and whispered to the empty space, "We're gonna be okay." I spent the rest of the day unpacking, mostly books, old photos, and that laptop I'd started writing on again. Around sunset, I opened the window and watched the skyline turn gold, my reflection fading into the glass. The city didn't look like a battlefield anymore. It looked like a beginning. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number, again. My stomach clenched before curiosity won. Unknown. "Hey, it's Mark. I know you blocked my number. I borrowed a friend's phone. Please don't hang up, or delete this. I just want to say something." I should have ignored it, but something in me, maybe that stubborn part that still wanted closure, made me type back. Me. Say it, then stop. "Mark, I wanted you to know I'm moving. Taking a job in San Antonio. Thought you'd rather hear it from me than through someone else." I sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding. Me. Good. A new start might do you good. "Mark, I'm not running. I'm trying to learn. I read your story online. The one you wrote. My breath caught. How did you—" "Mark, Roxy posted it on Facebook. Said it was brilliant. She didn't name you, but I knew." I froze. He'd read it. The story, our story, that I'd turned into fiction. The earring, the betrayal, the chili drawer. All of it, disguised with new names but the same bones. Mark. I deserved every word. Me. Good. There was a long pause before the next message came. Mark, I hope someday you can forgive me. Not for me. For you. I know I don't deserve it, but I still hope. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I typed, me. Forgiveness isn't a gift I owe you. It's one I'll give myself when I'm ready. And then I blocked that number too. 2 days later, Olivia texted me a picture. She'd gotten a tattoo. A small pearl outlined in black ink on her wrist. Olivia. A reminder not to ignore the obvious anymore. Thought you'd appreciate it. Me. It's perfect. Olivia. You should get one too. I looked at my hand, at the faint tan line where my wedding ring used to be. Maybe, I texted back. But not a pearl, something else. That night, I went to a late poetry open mic on South Congress. I didn't plan to read. I just wanted to listen. But halfway through the night, I found myself walking to the stage with my notebook shaking in my hands. My name's Claire, I said, and this is something I wrote about choosing between fire and forgiveness. The room went quiet. My voice trembled on the first line, then steadied. There's a woman who finds proof of betrayal in a quiet car. She wants to burn it all. His name, his lies, her softness. But she learns that fire doesn't cleanse. It consumes. And forgiveness isn't surrender. It's oxygen. It's saying, you don't get to own my pain. It's walking away, not because you're weak, but because you're done. When I finished, the crowd clapped. Not loud, but warm, like they'd understood every word. Roxy, sitting in the back with a proud smile, mouthed, finally. After the show, a woman in her 50s came up to me and said, I found my husband's earring once too. I never told anyone. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. That's when I realized forgiveness didn't have to mean letting Mark back in. It could mean freeing myself, and maybe even giving others a voice. I walked home that night under the hum of streetlights, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not perfection, not closure, just peace. When I got home, I wrote the last line of my story. She chose neither fire nor revenge. She chose herself. Then I saved it, closed the laptop, and whispered to the dark, I forgive you, but I'm not coming back. And for once that didn't hurt. It felt holy. You'd think after forgiveness comes peace, like you climb the last hill and the view is nothing but calm skies. But peace, I learned, isn't quiet. It's maintenance. It's answering the same questions, fighting the same whispers, reminding yourself that healing isn't a one-time event. It's a daily choice. The first wave of fallout came from people I hadn't heard from in months. Old friends, church acquaintances, even Mark's sister. Somehow everyone had found out that I'd left him, and everyone had an opinion. The story, of course, didn't stay clean. It never does. By the time it circled back to me, I was apparently the one who'd been distant, the cold wife, the woman who'd given up on a good man. I heard it from my mom first. She called one Sunday morning while I was cleaning the new apartment, Aretha Franklin humming through the speakers. Baby, I ran into Denise at the grocery store, she said, her voice too cautious. She says Mark told her y'all just grew apart, that it wasn't anyone's fault. I laughed, sharp and humorless. Yeah, that's his version. I guess infidelity sounds cleaner when you wrap it in diplomacy. Claire, she said softly, you know people talk. You can't control that. I'm not trying to, I said, tossing a towel into the laundry basket. But I'm not letting him narrate my life either. Good, she said, because you come from a long line of women who rewrite endings. That made me pause. My mother, who'd survived 2 marriages, had never said anything that proud before. You mean that? I do, she said. But be careful, baby. Folks love gossip more than growth. She was right. By Wednesday, Roxy called from the salon sounding furious. Girl, you won't believe the nerve. One of my clients said she saw Mark at HEB looking pitiful. Said he told her he's been trying to win you back, but you're being cruel. Cruel? I said, laughing. That's rich. Oh, it gets better, she said. He told her you're writing stories about him online to humiliate him. That part stung, mostly because it was half true. I had turned my pain into art. But humiliation hadn't been the point. Liberation had. Roxy continued. You want me to post something? Clear the air? I thought about it. The temptation was strong. To defend myself. To explain. To set the record straight. But then I remembered that peace wasn't about convincing people who'd already chosen a side. Nah, I said. Let him talk. The truth doesn't need a press release. Still, I won't lie. The whispers got under my skin. At work, regulars would glance at me with that mix of pity and curiosity. Someone even left an anonymous note on a napkin at the counter. You're better off without him. I didn't know if it was meant kindly or not, but I kept it. Meanwhile, Olivia and I texted sometimes, cautiously, like two veterans comparing scars. She told me she'd started therapy. I told her I was thinking about publishing my story for real. You should, she wrote. Women need to know they can walk away and still rebuild. That night, I drafted a new version of the story. Not a diary entry, not revenge, just truth disguised as fiction. It was called The Woman in the Passenger Seat. I posted it anonymously on a blog. Within a week, it had thousands of reads. Comments poured in. This is my life. I found a lipstick stain once. Thought I was crazy. Thank you for writing this. Reading those words felt like exhaling for the first time in months. I wasn't just a woman who'd been cheated on. I was part of a collective heartbeat, women reclaiming their voices one confession at a time. But peace still had its interruptions. One evening, as I was closing up the diner, a familiar voice said, You really wrote about me, huh? Mark. He was standing at the door, hands in his pockets, hair longer than usual, eyes tired. I froze, the dish towel slipping from my hand. I told you not to come here, I said quietly. I just wanted to see you, he said. I'm leaving for San Antonio tomorrow. Thought maybe we could talk. Without the walls this time. I glanced at the clock. It was almost midnight. You've had months to talk, I said. Why now? Because I read everything, he said. Every line. You made me look like a monster, but you weren't wrong. I swallowed hard. Then why are you here? Because I needed to tell you in person, he said, stepping closer. You were right about me wanting to feel seen. But what I didn't realize was that you were the only one who ever actually saw me, even when you shouldn't have. The air between us thickened. I hated that part of me still wanted to believe him. I don't want your confession, I said finally. I want my peace. He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. You already have it. I just needed to see it with my own eyes. And then he left. No dramatic goodbye. No please. Just silence and the faint smell of rain on his jacket. When I locked up the diner, I stood there for a long time, letting the fluorescent light hum around me. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just breathed. The next morning, I told Roxy. She whooped. Girl, that's the universe giving you closure with free delivery. I laughed until my ribs hurt. But the real closure came later that week when my mom called again. You know, she said. I saw Mark's sister at the pharmacy. She told me he's moving for real this time. Said he told the family he doesn't expect to hear from you again. Good, I said simply. She hesitated. He looked rough, baby. You sure you don't want to? No, Mama, I said gently. I already gave enough of my life to feeling sorry for him. He can heal however he needs to. I've got my own future to build. There was pride in her silence. Then she said, You sound just like your grandma. I smiled. That's the best thing you could have said. That weekend, Roxy threw me a housewarming/divorce celebration. She decorated my apartment with balloons that said, Finally free and you go, girl. Olivia came too. They met for the first time. I worried it'd be awkward, but it wasn't. They hugged like old friends. We danced, ate tacos, and laughed until someone spilled margarita mix on the floor. At one point, Olivia raised her glass and said, To the women who stopped apologizing for surviving. And we all cheered. Later, when the music died down and everyone left, I stood on my balcony barefoot, the city lights twinkling like forgiveness itself. I thought about all the rumors still floating out there, the people dissecting our story like it was a soap opera. But none of that mattered anymore, because for the first time, the story was mine, and I was the one deciding how it ended. By early spring, Austin started to smell like cedar and wet concrete again, that in-between season where the air's thick with possibility. I'd been in my new apartment for 2 months, and I'd almost started to forget what his voice sounded like. Almost. But grief isn't linear. It's circular. It sneaks up while you're doing dishes or tying your shoes. It hums beneath the surface, quiet but persistent, like a song you once knew by heart. I'd wake up some mornings and feel free, I'd stretch in my own bed, make coffee in silence, open the balcony door, and breathe. Other mornings, I'd roll over expecting to find someone there and curse my muscle memory for being so loyal. Healing was slow, unpredictable, but it was happening, piece by piece. Roxy said I was in my Phoenix era. She'd drop by unannounced with grocery bags full of Trader Joe's wine and say things like, "Girl, your aura finally stopped screaming." I'd laugh and tell her that my aura was still whispering bad words in Mark's direction, but I was getting there. At work, things felt different too. Customers smiled wider, maybe because I did. The owner, Gus, noticed it first. "You seem lighter, kid," he said one night while counting the register. "Whatever storm you walked through looks like it passed." I smiled. "Storm's still out there somewhere, but I built a roof this time." He chuckled. "That's the spirit." Then came the email. It was from a small online magazine, a women's publication that featured short stories about love, loss, and the messy space between. They'd found the woman in the passenger seat on my blog. The editor wrote, "Your story hit a nerve. It's raw, unfiltered, and painfully true. We'd love to feature it next month." I sat at my laptop for a long minute, just staring at the words. My hands started to tremble. For the first time in months, it wasn't because of anger or heartbreak. It was joy. Pure, nervous, trembling joy. When I told Roxy, she screamed so loud, the neighbors banged on the wall. "See? I told you your pain was marketable." "God, Roxy," I said, laughing through tears. "That's not the point." "It's exactly the point," she said, grabbing my shoulders. "You turned heartbreak into art, baby. You alchemized betrayal into content. Beyoncé would be proud." We celebrated with cheap champagne and tacos from the truck around the corner. But when I got home later, the excitement melted into quiet reflection. I sat on my balcony, laptop on my knees, and read the story again. Every sentence carved from the bruises of that time. I thought about Mark reading it too, how he might feel seeing his sins repurposed into paragraphs. Would he hate me? Pity me? Maybe both. But for once I didn't care. I didn't write it for him. I wrote it for the woman I'd been before I found that earring, the one who kept shrinking herself to fit inside someone else's story. The magazine published the piece the following week. It went semi-viral, not massive, but enough to fill my inbox with messages from women all over the country. Texas, Ohio, Georgia, even Alaska. Some were angry, some were grateful, most were heartbroken. "You told my story. I thought I was crazy until I read this. Thank you for giving words to what silence kept choking." I read every single one. I cried through half. I realized then that healing wasn't about erasing pain. It was about repurposing it, turning broken glass into something that caught the light. One night, after a particularly long day at the diner, I came home to a letter in my mailbox. Handwritten, no return address. For a second, I thought it might be from Mark again, a last attempt to haunt me. My heart stuttered as I opened it. It wasn't him. It was from Olivia. "Claire, I saw your story in that magazine. I recognized every line. I wanted to say thank you, not just for writing it, but for handling it with grace. You didn't demonize me or him. You just told the truth, and somehow it made me feel less ashamed of being part of it. I'm leaving Austin too. Got a job offer in Denver. New city, new start. I hope you keep writing. The world needs more women like you. With gratitude, Olivia." I smiled, reading it. Relief, closure, gratitude, all in one neat envelope. I tucked it into my journal beside my original list of forgiveness rules. That weekend, I decided to finally clear out the last of Mark's things I still had. The box in the back of my closet labeled Miscellaneous Memories. Inside were old photos, a concert ticket, a cracked mug from our honeymoon in New Orleans, and the second pearl earring, the one that had started everything. I sat cross-legged on the floor, holding that tiny glint of gold between my fingers. It looked so innocent, so meaningless now. I thought about throwing it away, then about keeping it, then about something in between. In the end, I drove to Zilker Park, found a quiet spot near the water, and dug a small hole in the dirt. I placed the earring inside, covered it up, and whispered, "You can rest now." It wasn't symbolic revenge. It was release. When I stood, a little boy nearby was flying a kite that refused to cooperate. It kept nosediving into the grass. His dad laughed and said, "Try again, buddy. You gotta let it catch the wind." That line stuck with me. You gotta let it catch the wind. That night, I wrote those words on a sticky note and put it on my fridge. Every time I looked at it, I thought about how life was finally starting to lift again. But healing, as always, had a funny way of testing your progress. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Gus at the diner. "Hey, Claire," he said, his tone hesitant. "You might want to know. Someone came by asking for you." My stomach dropped. "Who?" "Tall guy. Worn-out jeans, gray hoodie. Said he used to know you." I closed my eyes. "Mark." "Yeah," Gus said carefully. "Didn't cause trouble. Just asked if you were happy. I told him you were doing great." He smiled, left a big tip, and walked out. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. "Thanks, Gus. Really." "No problem," he said. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "I think so." After I hung up, I sat on my couch staring at the city lights through my window. Somewhere out there, he was still walking the same streets, probably trying to make sense of what he'd lost. But that wasn't my responsibility anymore. I poured myself a glass of wine, opened my notebook, and wrote a new story. This one about a woman who finds peace in letting go of closure. As I wrote, I realized I'd been picking up the pieces all along. I just wasn't rebuilding the same thing. I was making something new. And when I finished the story, I didn't cry this time. I just smiled, whispered amen, and hit save. The morning after Gus's call, I woke up before sunrise. The apartment was quiet except for the low hum of the fridge and the faint city noise leaking through the window. I stood there barefoot in the kitchen, watching the first light slide over the floor, and I realized something I hadn't in months. I wasn't scared anymore. Not of being alone, not of seeing him again, not of what people thought. The fear had burned out somewhere between heartbreak and healing, and what was left was something stronger. Calm. I poured myself coffee and stepped out onto the balcony. Austin was just waking up. Joggers passing below. Birds perched on power lines. The smell of breakfast tacos drifting from the corner truck. I leaned against the railing, mug warm in my hands, and whispered to the city, "I made it." It wasn't a victory chant. It was gratitude. I decided that day I was done surviving. I wanted to start living again. So, I made a list, my favorite kind of therapy. At the top, I wrote, "Things I'll do because I can." Take a solo trip, somewhere with water and silence. Submit another story. Buy myself flowers every Friday. Learn to dance again, without waiting for someone to ask. Fall in love again, eventually, but only with peace first. I folded the list and stuck it to my fridge under a magnet shaped like a cactus. Then I got dressed, tied my hair up, and went out into the world with no plan but forward. By noon, I was sitting in a tiny tattoo parlor on South Lamar, the same one Olivia had mentioned before she left for Denver. The walls were covered in neon signs and Polaroids of strangers immortalizing moments of pain and power. The artist, a woman named Jude with silver braids and kind eyes, smiled when I showed her my sketch. A small kite, string trailing in the wind. "Symbolic?" she asked. "Very," I said. "It's a reminder." "Of what?" "That sometimes you just have to let things catch the wind." She nodded like she understood exactly. The buzz of the needle was steady, hypnotic. I watched as she inked the outline onto my wrist. Delicate, free, permanent. When she finished, she wiped it clean and said, "There you go. Looks like motion." "Good," I said. "That's all I want." Later that evening, I met Roxy at our favorite diner. Not the one I worked at, but the old retro place off Congress with neon signs and milkshakes thick enough to break a spoon. She gasped when she saw the tattoo. "Girl, you actually did it." "I did," I said, grinning. "Kite and flight." She clinked her milkshake glass against mine. "To new beginnings that don't need apologies." We sat there for hours talking about everything and nothing. Music, work, gossip, dreams. For once, my laughter wasn't hiding anything. When I got home that night, the apartment felt different. Not empty. Open. Like I'd finally cleared out the ghosts. But closure has a sense of humor, because just as I was brushing my teeth, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. At first, I ignored it. Then curiosity, that old friend, won again. Unknown. "Claire, it's Mark. Don't block me. I promise this isn't what you think." I sighed, then typed back, "You've got 60 seconds. He replied instantly. Mark, I just wanted to tell you I'm leaving Texas for good. The job in San Antonio fell through. I'm moving to Arizona. New start. Me. Good for you. Mark, I know you don't owe me anything, but I wanted to thank you for the silence, for not dragging my name through the mud, even though I earned it. Me. I didn't protect you, Mark. I protected myself. Mark. I know, and I respect that. I didn't reply. I wasn't angry anymore, but I also wasn't interested in comforting him. After a moment, he sent one last message. Mark, I hope one day you find someone who deserves your forgiveness, someone who doesn't make you question your worth. I stared at it for a long time, then typed back, I already found her. She's me. Then I deleted the thread. I slept deeply that night. No dreams, no memories, just peace. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight spilling across my bed and a text from the magazine editor. Editor, Claire, your story's being nominated for a regional award. If you're in town next month, we'd love for you to come read it live. I screamed so loud my neighbor knocked on the wall. Then I laughed until I cried. I texted Roxy, Girl, I think I'm about to win something. Roxy, you already did. You got your life back. She was right. Over the next few weeks, life took on a rhythm I didn't know I'd been missing. Early mornings writing by the window, long walks through Zilker Park, nights out with Roxy that ended in fries and confessions. Sometimes I'd still catch myself thinking about him, not with bitterness, just curiosity, where he might be, whether he'd ever found peace. But then I'd remember that his story wasn't mine to carry anymore. One Friday evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, I found myself back at Barton Springs, the same spot where everything had broken months ago. I sat on the same bench, kite tattoo glinting in the light. A little girl nearby was chasing bubbles, laughing so hard she kept stumbling. Her mom watched with that mix of exhaustion and awe only parents have, and I thought, maybe that's what healing looks like. Stumbling. Laughing anyway. I took out my phone, opened my notes app, and wrote the final line to the story I'd been working on. Not fiction this time, but truth. She stopped needing closure when she realized she was the ending. Then I saved it, closed my phone, and whispered, Amen. That night, I dreamed of water. Calm, endless, glittering in the sun. In the dream, I wasn't running or hiding or searching. I was floating, breathing, free. When I woke up, I decided I was going to take that solo trip from my list. Somewhere coastal, somewhere quiet. I looked up flights to California, to Oregon, to anywhere with a shoreline and space to think. But before booking, I called my mom. Hey, I said, you up for a road trip? She laughed. You mean just you and me? Yeah, no men, no drama, just mother-daughter therapy with snacks. She paused, then said, Baby, I'd love that. I smiled. Good. Pack light. We're chasing sunsets. And just like that, the next chapter began. Not with an ending, but with a decision. A decision to live. The first stretch of highway out of Austin looked the same as it always had. Long ribbons of asphalt, tall grass leaning into the wind, the skyline fading behind us like a memory that finally stopped calling my name. Mom rode shotgun, her sunglasses perched on her nose, singing along to an old Anita Baker song that spilled from the speakers. The car smelled like coffee and coconut lotion. The windows cracked just enough to let in the April air. For the first time in over a year, I felt the hum of peace in my bones. Not the fragile, fleeting kind that waits for the next shoe to drop, but the solid kind. The kind that says you did it, girl. You made it through the fire and didn't turn to ash. Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. You okay? I smiled. Better than okay. She nodded, watching the road. You know, I was scared for you for a while. Not because you left him. That part made sense. I was scared because you forgot how to take up space. I'm proud of you for remembering. Her words landed soft but deep. Thanks, Mama, I said quietly. We stopped in Fredericksburg for lunch, a tiny Texas town with antique shops and murals on brick walls. We ate at a diner that smelled like biscuits and butter. The waitress called everyone Han, and kept topping off our coffee until I was vibrating. We laughed about everything, about her obsession with Wheel of Fortune, about my teenage rebellion, about how healing somehow made room for joy again. Later that afternoon, as we got back on the road, I caught my reflection in the rear-view mirror, I barely recognized her. This version of me with sunlight on her face and calm in her eyes. She didn't flinch at her own reflection anymore. She didn't apologize for existing. We drove west until the land opened up and the sky turned gold. When the radio faded into static, Mom started humming an old church song, her voice low and steady. I joined in, the sound small but sure, our voices blending like memory and future meeting in the middle. By the time we reached Marfa, the air was cool and dry. The horizon stretched wide and unbothered, the kind of landscape that makes you believe in second chances. We checked into a small roadside motel painted mint green, the kind with flickering neon lights and doors that still used keys instead of cards. That night, we sat outside wrapped in blankets, sipping wine from paper cups and watching the stars come alive. The desert sky was endless, scattered with 1,000 tiny reminders that beauty doesn't need to be loud to be strong. Mom turned to me. "So, what now?" I exhaled slowly. "Now I make new rules, not for other people. For me." She raised an eyebrow. "Rules like what?" I thought about it. "Rule 1, I don't shrink myself for love again." Good start. "Rule 2, I won't confuse peace with silence. If something feels wrong, I'll say it." She smiled. "That's my girl." "Rule 3, I said, looking up at the stars. "I'll only let people close if they can handle the truth, the whole truth, not just the soft parts." Mom nodded, her eyes glinting. "And Rule 4? I grinned. "Rule 4, I'll never chase closure again. If a door closes, it's because I finally learned to walk through better ones." She laughed, clinking her paper cup against mine. "To better doors. To better doors," I echoed. We stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in quiet comfort, the kind that doesn't need fixing. The next morning, I woke early and walked through the desert while the world was still half asleep. The air was cool and sharp, my breath visible in the rising light. I thought about all the versions of myself that had gotten me here. The naive newlywed, the angry woman shaking with betrayal, the writer bleeding truth into stories. I loved them all now. They weren't mistakes. They were roots. When I got back, Mom was sitting outside the motel room with a cup of coffee, hair wild, face peaceful. "You look like you found something out there," she said. "I did," I said, smiling. "Myself." She handed me a donut from the box between us. "Keep her close this time." "I will." When we got back to Austin a few days later, the city didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt like home again. Messy, loud, alive. I hung a new sign on my apartment wall that said, "She believed she could, so she did." Cheesy? Sure, but true. The night I returned, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine and watched the skyline pulse with lights. I thought about Mark for a moment. Not with pain, not even pity, just distant gratitude. He had broken me open, and in doing so, made room for a woman who wasn't afraid to start over. I whispered a quiet goodbye to the ghost of him, and everything that had come with it. Then I opened my notebook and wrote one last entry under a new title. New rules, new boundaries. I will not confuse comfort with love. I will not accept half-truths as honesty. I will protect my peace like it's oxygen. I will choose softness without surrender. I will not wait to be chosen. I will choose myself, every time. I closed the notebook, feeling the finality of it settle in my chest. Roxy came by later that week with takeout, and that same big grin. "So, famous author," she teased. "What's next?" "More writing," I said. "More living. Maybe dating?" she asked with a mischievous smirk. "Maybe," I said, smiling. "But this time I'll know what to look for." "Which is?" "Someone who feels like peace, not a project." Roxy raised her glass. "I'll drink to that." We clinked glasses, and she said, "You know, Claire, you're kind of a walking miracle." I laughed. "No, I'm just a woman who finally got tired of her own sad story." Weeks passed, and life grew beautifully ordinary. I worked. I wrote. I met new people. I smiled at strangers without second-guessing their intentions. I let joy find me in small, ordinary places. The first sip of coffee, a good playlist in traffic, a sunset that lingered too long. Then one evening, as I was leaving work, a man held the door open for me. He had kind eyes and a gentle smile. "You dropped this," he said, handing me the pen I'd been twirling. I thanked him, and he laughed softly. "You look like someone who writes." "I do," I said. A little. Then keep doing it, he said, and walked away. Just like that. Simple, human, unforced. I didn't read into it. Didn't build castles from a single sentence. But I did smile all the way home, because for the first time, I wasn't scared of new beginnings. Back in my apartment, I placed the pen on my desk beside my notebook. The city buzzed outside, full of stories waiting to be lived. I turned on the lamp, opened a fresh page, and began writing again. Not about him, not about the past, but about what came next. She didn't need to be rescued. She just needed to remember that her wings had always been there. And under that, I wrote the words that had carried me through it all. You gotta let it catch the wind.